What is player development? What is this position that's growing with college football programs and other sports? What is player development? Well, if you're asking that question, there's 7 things you need to know. That's right, 7 things you need to know about player development. Number 1, player development is not uniform. It is geared or defined by the head coach of a program, and whatever that coach wants done is how it gets done. So it is not uniform. So I worked at 3 universities over 6 years in a player development role, and it was different everywhere I was at. So player development is not uniform. So you may see, and I know as this position grows, actually I have a podcast about it growing. You can find it right here. As this position grows, a lot of people see, oh, this person's doing that over here, so maybe this person's doing that. It is not uniform. It is defined by the head coach. So when you're looking at this position and you're learning about this position, you need to make sure, as this series is getting close to interviewing, I'll talk about that, but you need to make sure as you're going into these interviews, as you're having these discussions, that you understand what is being asked about or being asked of the person in the player development role. Now, before we go to number 2, I just want to thank you so much for tuning in. Right now, this is player development hiring season. This is player development hiring season, and we have an 8 podcast series that covers things that you need to know, tips that you need to have in interviews, and just other things that you need to know about the player development role. You could find out specifically what will be covered in this series by subscribing to the newsletter, which is in the show notes. Once again, disclaimer, I cannot promise anybody that you will, number 1, get interviewed or get a job in player development. What I want to do with this 8-week series is help you prepare and help you understand what you will be getting yourself into. Once again, if you want more information on that, please go in the show notes and click the link to get to the newsletter. All right, so once again, there's 7 things. I got to number 1. Let's get to number 2. Number 2, player development is all about relationships. The second thing you need to know is player development is all about relationships. I tell people this all the time. People want the secret sauce to player development. People want to know things. They want the shortcuts. They want all this. It's about building relationships. You must be a relationship builder to succeed in this role. That's relationships with student athletes. That's relationships with coaches. That's relationships with administration. That's relationships with student athletes' families. That's relationships with coaches' families. That's relationships with the campus, the city, the community, sometimes the state. You have to be alumni, former players. You have to be a relationship builder. It is all about relationships and player development. You will not succeed if you do not build relationships in this role. Just trust me, there's no way around it. You can have the best programming, you can have the best resources, you can have the best ideas. If you do not build relationships, you will not succeed in this role. Now, welcome to the Player Development Pod. My name is Ed Jones II. I am your host. If you got any value from this podcast, or even the first, 3 minutes of this podcast, please press the like button and subscribe to this podcast. Once again, we're doing an 8-week series. This is player development hiring season. This is an 8-week series. So make sure you subscribe and just share this podcast if it helps you. Number 3, the third thing you need to know about player development is it is about servant leadership. Now, I saw some interesting takes on servant leadership on LinkedIn recently, and everybody has a different thoughts on what servant leadership is. Now, the number 1 thing I want to tell you is this servant leadership is not coddling. I did not coddle when I was in the role. I don't believe in coddling. This is what servant leadership looks like to me. Servant leadership looks like to me as you serve this athlete, as you serve this person, you are leading them to a place where they can do whatever topic, skill, subject, whatever you want to call it, that you're leading them to, that they can do it themselves. So you're serving them to lead. Servant leadership, you're showing, hey, I will serve you and help lead you to this destination. Once again, you don't want servant leadership to be coddling. Well, I'm just going to do this for them because that's servant leadership. That is not servant leadership. Okay, the leadership, and I'm not a leadership guru. I know a lot of them, but leadership is, to me, is helping somebody do something that they cannot do on their own. So servant leadership is just, I'm going to serve you while I help you get something done that you cannot get on your own. Once again, it's not coddling, but player development is about servant leadership. And this goes with players. This goes with staff. Once again, there's coaches. Some coaches want you to walk them. I'm not walking you through this. You're an adult just like me. I will help you. You can get this done, right? Same with student athletes, parents. You want to serve to help lead people to get to a point where they can get it done themselves. That is servant leadership to me. Yes, you serve people, you help people, different things like that, but you do not want to get coddled, and you do not want to be used in this role. Once the players find out that they can coddle you and that they can run you over, it's a wrap. You're done in the role. If you're in that state right now, either you need a head coach to help you get out of that, or you need to start looking for another role. Servant leadership is helping someone get to a place they can't get to on their own. So my act of servant leadership to some of you all, so there are a lot of you all who watch this who are in a role. Shout out to you for all that you do. And there are some of you all that watch this who want to get in a role. So my servant leadership act, serving you to help lead you get to this point, is that I have 100 tips of player development. The episode is right here. Podcast episode is my 100th episode. That was so fun. But you also can download the document. The document is in the show notes. Once again, that's 100. Yes, 100 tips of player development that could be yours today. Number 4, the fourth thing you need to know about player development is it is one of the fastest growing positions in sport. Now, I did an episode on player development growth and how it's skyrocketing. You can find it up here. You can find it in the show notes. But this position is growing astronomically. When I first in the role in 2016, when I started at the University of Houston, there were, where's that? University of Houston, there it is right there. There were 53 people in the role, 53. And now, looking at end of last year, because I got to update, there's some new people in the role. Shout out to you all that are new in the role. If you need help, I got you. There were 155 people in the role. And so that's a span of about 6-7 years. That is incredible growth. So it's one of the fastest growing positions. I've talked multiple reasons, multiple times about why it's one of the fastest growing. Like I said, check out that podcast episode there. You can learn more about it. But for some of you all who say, okay, it's growing, I'm interested, but how can I be a part of this growth? How can I be prepared for this position? Come on, you came to the right place. I have a live cohort course, the Player Development Guide course, where I walk through starting in player development to a point where you are good at the end of the year, where you can do your own end of year review. Some of the things we talk about is defining player development. You'll come up with a player development plan, player development messaging. You'll have your first 90 days set. You'll go through interview prep. We'll talk about best practices in the role, but that course is going to cover everything to make sure that you are prepared when you get in the role, if and when you get in the role. All right, the fifth thing you need to know, there is a lot of interest in player development. You're watching this video. We have about 350 subscribers right now on all our social media platforms. We have over, I think, around 1,500 people. So appreciate all you all who are following. And so there's a lot of interest in player development. I still to this day get LinkedIn messages about player development. There's a lot of people that are in the role who get messages about player development. There's a lot of interest in the role, which is really, really good. I love the role. Let me show y'all, some of y'all may not know, but I served at the University of Houston and Kansas and Baylor, had opportunities to serve there in the role. And so that was really, really good. And for me, and it really, really, I wanted to be a coach at the beginning of my time, but spending time there, I was like, nah, I want to be in this role. So there's a lot of interest. I'm happy that people are interested in the role. It is a great role to get into if you're about relationship building and creating impact in the lives of others. Now, with that great interest by a lot of people want resources. People want things to get them ahead. So I've created resources, not only this page, this podcast and other things, blogs, newsletters, things that I've created. There is a self-paced online course that is in the show notes to help you prepare and get ahead of others as you look to get in this role. Number 6. Player development is not babysitting. This is a crazy story about babysitting. At the time, it was 2019. I just got the job at KU. I went to go visit my wife for work. She worked in an architecture firm in the Kansas City suburbs. And so I went in there and people saw me in my KU gear. And so one of her coworkers, he was like, hey, do you play at KU? I was like, no, I didn't play. But I work on the football staff. I'm the director of player development. I started telling him kind of a few things I did. And he's like, oh, you babysit them. And I was like, no, sir. Like I shut that down immediately. I was like, no, sir, I do not babysit them. Let me go deeper on explaining what I do for them. And so I went through, did all this. And he's like, oh my goodness, like, wow. So yes, player development is not babysitting. And so that really, I gave him a very, how can I say this? A very cordial, for lack of a better word, rebuke on what he said. And he understood after our conversation what player development truly was. But it is not babysitting. Are there roles where will you maybe have to do some things that makes it feel like it's babysitting? Yes, you're dealing with most of them going to be your newcomers who are getting used to college, and you're helping them. Once again, this goes back to what I said about servant leadership. You're serving to help them get to a point where they can do it on their own. You should not be continuing to do the same stuff you were doing the first month or the next semester. You want to lead them to that next level. Now, do some coaches see it as babysitting? Absolutely. Have I worked for coaches who saw it as babysitting? Absolutely. I worked for one coach. He hired me and told me it would be close to student athlete development. And then 6 months later, he was like, hey, it looks like you're trying to be a student athlete development person. And I was like, that's what you told me it would be. And then found out he wanted me to babysit. So there are those obstacles, for lack of a better word, out there, or that's the best word, honestly, obstacles. But you want to ensure that when you're interviewing, you need to hear these things. And I tell players, the expectation may be, you may be in a role and the expectation may be for you to babysit. You need to have real conversation with players like, hey, this is where I'm gonna lead you. And you could change that narrative of being a babysitter by showing that, hey, these players don't need you to do everything, that they're capable to do things. Because this is what I always tell coaches, no matter what coaches say, they cannot walk out on the field and whisper in the player's ear, or whatever sport it is, the court, the track, the swimming pool, the golf course, whatever. You can't whisper right before they do something. You gotta let them do it, right? You gotta let them go out there and have the action. You can coach them up, then they gotta go out there and do it. So I'm gonna do the same exact thing that you're doing, coach. You cannot go in his ear and tell him what play's coming and what's coming down the pipe. So he, just like he knows how to learn how to play, he can do these simple things I'm asking him to do as well. And then the seventh thing you need to know, the final thing you need to know, is that player development is so rewarding. So rewarding. So rewarding. It is a lot. Now, a lot of you all see these posts on social media. You think, oh, it's going to be being in schools and doing career fairs and doing all that good stuff every single day. That is not what it's going to be. It's going to be some tough conversations. It's going to be time where you have to take a deep breath when addressing a student athlete, when you see that growth is not happening or seeing that they just don't want to grow. But eventually they do get to that point where it does happen. I'll leave one story for you all. He plays for the Indianapolis Colts. His name is Grant Stewart. So Grant Stewart was with me at the University of Houston. Grant has an infectious smile, and you'll know him for the Colts. He has all the hair. He runs down. His hair is flying everywhere. He probably has a head and shoulders. He probably has a Head and Shoulders commercial or endorsement, because he got the locks. He had the locks. Even when we recruited him in high school, you could see his locks running down the field. And so Grant had this infectious smile, this great personality. And so I would always say, hey, Grant, you want to come with us to this school? Do you want to do stuff in the community? I know you care about people, because I saw how he cared about his brothers and sisters and his family during his official visit. So you notice certain things like that. And I say, Grant, it'd be great if you would join us. And he would like legit avoid me. Like Grant would take off running away from me. And now Grant was I think he won state in Texas for the 400 or something like that. So I had zero chance once it got past about 5 yards. But anyway, Grant would take off. And so we never got opportunity to get Grant in the community. And when I left, I was driving to Kansas and I was texting all the players and calling, more voice texting because I was driving, but I was letting players know. And Grant called me back and I was just like, oh, I was like, hey, what's up, Grant? He's like, man, coach. He's like, thank you for what you did. And I was like, Grant, what did I do? He was like, I avoided you so much, but I'm so thankful that you showed me that you always wanted me in the community, because now I'm in the community. He had some changes in the life he made, and Grant wasn't terrible by any means, but he made some changes in his faith and different things like that. And he saw the impact that he can have. And so he called me. It was really good. He's like, I'm going to get in the community. I'm going to do this. And the best thing that I got to see with Grant was when Grant, as I said, he's in NFL, when he went to the combine and when he did his pro day, he raised funds to help with sex trafficking in the Houston area and around the United States and the world. And that to me was like, wow. That was so rewarding. Those years, or that year of chasing this guy around who I knew would be so impactful, and him saying no, the reward was there because he went out on his own, and that seed that I sowed, thank God he watered it, grew into this beautiful initiative where he raised so much money for sex trafficking. He's doing incredible stuff. He played for the Buccaneers for a little while, and he's playing for the Colts. He's actually Mr. Irrelevant. He's the last person drafted in that draft. I hate that term, Mr. Irrelevant, because that's pretty cool. Anybody is drafted, anybody gets opportunity. Everybody's relevant in life. Anyway, but he's continuing to do great work. I love following him on social media, seeing what he's doing. And Grant, if you see this, thank you so much for that rewarding aspect of this role. But that's the role, right? It's rewarding. Yeah, it was tough. I could have easily been like, you know what? Forget it. Grant don't want to get in the community. Let's keep it moving. But I kept challenging him because I knew the impact he could make. And when I wasn't there, right? That's impact. Sometimes you don't get to see it. When I wasn't there, those seeds, like I said, that were sown, reaped a great harvest. And so those are the 7 things about this player development role that you need to know. Number 1, it's not uniform. It's defined by the head coach and the administration. Number 2, it's all about relationships, all about relationships. Number 3, it's about servant leadership. Once again, not coddling, but servant leadership. Number 4, it's one of the fastest growing roles in sports. Number 5, there's a lot of interest in player development. Number 6, player development is not babysitting. And number 7, player development is rewarding. So hopefully that helped you all as we start season 5 of this podcast. How about that? I always love to take time to go back and talk about what player development is. And if you all are there, once again, I talked about all the resources throughout the podcast, but please check out the resources. There are a lot of great free resources for you. There are also paid resources for you. No matter what you do, if you get it free or if you get it paid, it is going to blow your expectation through the roof. Now, since it is hiring season, and this is what this 8 podcast series is about, I will go over interviewing in 2 podcasts, but I also have an interview workshop, a player development interview workshop that will be coming up. And if you are interested in that, please click in the show notes. Now, the newsletter talks about what you will get in the interview prep workshop, but here are a few things. Once again, subscribe to the newsletter. You can get it on your phone, you can get it to your computer. But of course, there's the hour and a half long interview instruction and discussion workshop. You'll get interviewing templates, and you'll get an interview strategy plan. And the last thing you'll get is a one-on-one mock interview at a separate time with me. So if you're interested in that player development interview prep workshop, please click the link in the show notes below. Now, some of you all know, going back to last podcast episode I've done, these podcast episodes will be a little longer in length. I am adding the tip of the week and the question of the week here. Now, I have tips of the week for the next 3 years because of the 100 tips. But some of you all are next 2 years, I think, or over a year. But anyway, questions of the week, they're thin. So if you want something answered, if you want a question answered, please send it, put it in the show notes or email it to me, or put it in the comments or email it to me, whatever it may be. But that's what we'll do. So today's tip of the week is to support a local food bank. Support a local food bank. There are different food banks, food shelters, initiatives that are fighting hunger in your city. If you're in the role, looking to get in a role, there are so many food banks. And I actually had an opportunity to go to one this past week that helps out. I live in Kansas City. It helps most of Kansas City and Missouri. That's 2 states. I think it's like 60 counties it helps. But there's a local food bank somewhere. And what we used to do with our players, they need help big time stocking around Thanksgiving. They need help stocking around the holidays, spring break. They get a lot of stuff. It's just a lot. They get so many donations and their staff isn't big enough to either pack all this stuff, carry all this stuff. I mean, we were putting diapers together, diaper packets, whatever it may be. But please go out and support your local food bank. I know I had a football team, so we're able to bring multiple guys there. There's other sports teams that are huge. But whatever you're doing, no matter where you are in the world and no matter what sports you're with, my tip of the week is to support your local food bank. That is a there's so much help that's needed there. That is a great opportunity for your athletes to not only help, but to see and be grateful for the opportunities they have. And there are certain places, I know when I was at the University of Kansas, there was a food bank on campus for students. And so it was good for our players to help and see that, hey, some of their classmates may need food. Maybe it's tough for them. But no matter what's going on in the city, there are shelters there to feed people, and you have an opportunity to help. Now, the question of the week, this one came from my guy, Drew Davis, who actually answered a question I had on Instagram. I said, what do y'all want to hear about player development? Now, I'm not going to make it into a full episode. Maybe I will a little later next year during the bowl games. I'm like, dang it, I missed the bowl game. But the question was like, what do you do during a bowl game? Like, how does player development work during a bowl game? And so wanted to break this down for you all here. So this is the last bowl game I was a part of. This was the All-State Sugar Bowl. When I was at Baylor, we won the conference championship and were able to play in this bowl. Unfortunately, I was not able to go to the bowl, as some of you all know from my experiences, but I kept this. So when I got this packet here, this is the first thing I did in a player development role. Now, this thing is ginormous. It has, actually like 80 pages, but there's a lot of stuff I'm not going to go through. So when first thing I'm going to do is go to the contents. And as you can see here are the contents for the 2022 All-State Sugar Bowl. And the first thing I did, you can see the star next to it, is I starred what I felt like immediately would help me in the role. There's a lot of other things I needed to know for the role myself and to help others, like operations. But the two biggest things I needed to know that helped me immediately were practice sites and mandatory appearances. Now, the practice sites on page 12, I'll tell you why that was really good for me to know in the role. Number one thing I think I always talk about that is overrated in this role and just in athletics in general is alumni engagement. How many former players live in New Orleans? How many former players that drive? I mean, Waco wasn't that far from New Orleans. How many will drive or come to the game? And so when I know the practice sites, if we already have a rule where we let alumni come to practices, I need to know where these sites are so I can send in an alumni newsletter, alumni text message, whatever it may be. And so at that point, we had a couple practice sites. So of course, the Superdome, New Orleans Saints Complex, Tulane University, and different places like that. And so I learned this at the University of Houston. We played our first game in the Las Vegas Bowl. We got to go to Bishop Gorman High School. And so players, you never know. As former players that live in the area around, hey, I want to come check out practice. All right, we'll be here. But you want to know the practice sites. You want to know the practice sites, not only for the former players, but even your current players. Their families are coming, different like that. Or they're going to ask you, where are we practicing? Especially in a place like, the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. They want to get into the Saints, see the Saints facility, whatever it may be. But knowing the practice sites is huge. It was also huge for me because I would look at where the hotel is and where the practice sites were. And I would kind of look at, how long would that bus ride be? What do guys need to do? How can we keep, guys, is it going to be a long bus ride? Is it going to be a short bus ride? Whatever it may be. But I'm looking at how do we do this? If I could, I'd go with equipment and check out the facilities. Where's the locker room? Where are they going to change? How can we do things? How can I help you all? But the practice sites was very, 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 very necessary in the role, I always felt like, for me. And then number 17, on page 17. So this is practice sites page. They give you information there. And then the last thing I always wanted to know was the mandatory appearances by the team. And so every bowl game, they have initiatives that they do already in the city, so you're going to do something. And shout out to Grace Muscarello. When I was at the University of Houston, she really helped me. When I was coming from a high school coach, she really helped me understand this aspect of bowl games. Like, guys got to be certain places. When we were in Vegas, we got to do some really, really cool things, like put fire detectors in people's homes and different stuff like that. So once again, shout out to Grace Muscarello for letting me know that when we were at the University of Houston. But looking here, right, the mandatory appearances, these are things that they have to be at. And so when I'm looking at it, right, and I'll show you all too what it looks like. So you see team, press conference, different things like that. I'm looking for that hospital visit, right? That hospital visit, it's a children's hospital. I'm already in, that is December 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th, maybe possibly one of those days or all of those days. I'm looking at the players who like going to hospital. Some players don't like going to hospital. Some players want to go to hospital. So I'm telling them, like, yeah, they may want to get so-and-so who's All-American or so-and-so who's a captain, but if so-and-so is going to be uncomfortable there, it's not going to be a great thing. So I have a list, and I'll talk about this later throughout these podcasts. I have 4 areas of community impact, and I would ask my players, which ones do you want to do, right? So every player in the locker room had opportunity to impact the community in the way they felt the most comfortable. And so anyway, I'm looking at this, okay, hospital visit, but if we go over all of it, starting at the team welcome press conference, okay, team welcomes at the airport. Most likely, if there's a press conference, the captain's going to talk. So I'm talking to the captains like, hey, be prepared, to talk, different things like that. And shout out to our SID departments. They're doing that as well. They may ask me, I've been in places where they ask me, hey, can you text so-and-so, make sure they know. So I'm working with the SID departments there. And then going to hospital visit, there's a staff dinner, so that staff players will need to be there. Formal press conference, once again, work with the SIDs. They're probably gonna say, hey, Ed, can you let so-and-so know? Or that communication normally already happens, and I'm just being that person to support what's already happened. And so that's, some of the stuff, and these are required events right here, as some of you all say, for the head coach. But even with the head coach, I'm thinking about who would he want with him, who should go with him, like different things like that. So that's for the head coach. They have required events for the coordinators, which is different. There's required events for the president. So yeah, the president has a president's dinner, field introduction, all that stuff. But the president's dinner, you don't know. Maybe the president wants a player or two there or someone on staff. So you just keep your eyes up on that. Then there's required events for the athletic director. Once again, that could be a dinner, a gala, or something they may want. Maybe not the night. If it's the gala is the night before the game, then no. But there may be something the athletic director wants a player. And maybe there's a pep rally, or maybe because every bowl I went to, we were there for 6 days. Maybe there's a pep rally, or maybe there's the New Orleans club of whatever university is, and they want to see a player. The athletic director wants a player to come. So kind of getting that stuff on my radar. Once again, is it going to happen? We don't know, but definitely want that on my radar. And then they have stuff here, required events for band and cheerleaders. So it's like, all right, if band and cheerleaders is going to be there, if it's a pep rally, we know the parade, we probably won't be there if it's the night before the game, different things. But you're looking for pep rallies, events, different things like that, that you want to make sure that you understand all the required appearances. Now, even in the required appearances, there are some that you would like to have. So, hey, here are some appearances that, can you make this happen? Would this be good for the guys? And then some of these guys, right, when I was at the University of Houston, let's say we played in Sugar Bowl, we had like 10 to 15 guys that are either, actually a little more. We had 10 to 15, maybe 20 guys, 10 to 20 guys that were either from New Orleans or had a connection in New Orleans who had moved to Houston and had family in Houston. And so you want to make sure, hey, maybe there's something that they know that they want to do. And if it's okay with the head coach, you get some time to get that community impact done as well. And so that's what a bowl game looks like from that standpoint. Now, during the bowl game, you definitely want to know the curfews. The head coach can give you curfews. You want to know those. You always want, I talked about this before in my first tip of the week, which you can find in this tips playlist or below or somewhere on this page. I don't know if they gave me enough cards, but ran out. But you always want to I always had a laminated roster on me, because you're just check who's on the bus, who's here, because you're in a different city, right? Who's on the bus, who's here? It's so-and-so at dinner, did so-and-so come here? So you're just checking. So I always kept like in my back pocket, like the coaches wear it a little, like it was just like this, right? And I always kept it on me so I can know what's going on, who's where they need to be. So you're always checking. There's a lot of opportunity for them to, we give them a chance to go out, right? And you just want to make sure that they understand the expectation, especially in cities like the bowl games I've been to. We had a bowl game in Las Vegas. I've been fortunate to go to a bowl game in Hawaii. We had a bowl game in Fort Worth, and then a place like New Orleans. It was like that. You got to make sure they know what's expected. And so, once again, that was how I looked at it. Going into the bowl game, whenever I got a bowl manual, I was looking for my other ones. This is the only one I could find. As I mentioned a little earlier, unfortunately, I wasn't able to go to this bowl game because I was let go before the bowl game. But anyway, I kept this, and that's how I looked at it when I went through it. And so, yeah. Those are different things you want to know. Hospitality, you need to know what a hospitality suite is. Child care. I know other things too, because coach is going to always ask you. Like ops is going to let them know. Shout out to all my ops teams. Ops or somebody in chief of staff, they're going to let coaches know, but coach is going to go to who they're most comfortable with. And in a lot of cases, it was me. And then you just need to know, coaches just sometimes they be on their phone recruiting. So they may say, hey, where was this? I know so-and-so said it, but where is it? So shout out to everybody. It's a group project in a sense. So during bowl games, the people on speed dial were director of operations, dietitians, strength staff, sports med, SID, athletic director over your sport. Like we're all like we're all on speed dial, just making sure this is not only a great experience for the players, but that we get everybody focused so we can get the dub. And so thank you, Drew, for that question. And that is what a bowl game is like. It's pretty interesting. I'll leave this too. One thing we did in Hawaii, in Vegas, when you have a team and the time zone's different than you normally are from, they believe they're getting a chance to be out later than they normally are, but they don't realize their body is actually going back to sleep on its normal schedule. So that's pretty cool. We kind of could play those psychological games on curfew to make them think, yeah, we get to be out till, whatever. And it's like, actually, your body's used to Houston time. When I had those bowl games there. But thank you so much for checking out this podcast. Once again, as I said in the podcast earlier, or at the end of last year, there will be more long form like this. Want to get as much information in one podcast as possible. Now, do you know what I'm going to say? We ain't changing this. Go out and do what? That's right. Go out and create generational impact. Don't wait. Create that generational impact today.